What's up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another Pay-Per-Viewpoint edition of the Smark Moment Smack Talk podcast. It's time for the WWE Hell in a Cell 2020 post show because that event just ended a few minutes ago. So, as per usual, here we're going to be giving you the full results breakdown. We're going to be recapping the show, talking about our thoughts, reviewing everything, top to bottom, all the matches, everything that happened in between. I am your host, as always, Tony Mango. Joining me, as always, are Callum Wiggins.
Dude, it is so early. I'm so happy.
Me too. And Robert DeFelice.
Yeah, we can never go back to 5-hour pay-per-views.
Admittedly, I was kind of going like, oh man, I hope that this gets done at like 8:30. It's it got done around 10 o'clock. And I'm still okay with that. I don't want to be doing the midnight pay-per-views anymore, like you said. Shorter pay-per-views are not a bad thing, as long as they're not, like 20 minutes and people aren't spending $70 for them or something the way they used to be. So I'm cool with that. I'm cool with the idea that I'm going to get some work done hours beforehand, and I might not have to go to bed at 10 in the morning again.
You will anyway, but
I probably will. Yeah, that's a whole nother different horribleness. I got good things to say. I got bad things to say. I've got some stuff in the middle. I know that we're all kind of bouncing around here on this one. This is not one of those events that like I can label like the Crown Jewel thing in the past where it's like Crown Jewel sucked and I hated everything, or the type of thing where it's like this is the best pay-per-view of the year and everything was amazing. I got some things I think are really great. I got some things I think are a big mistake. Kind of all over the board here. I don't know how to feel about this quite yet. I'm almost thinking that I need to give it like an entire month and figure out what they do going forward before I retroactively process whether or not this was a step in the right direction or some major flaws. How are you guys kind of feeling, generally speaking?
It's a mixed bag for me as well. I think there was some great matches on this show. There was some average matches. There was some absolutely baffling booking decisions. So it's kind of a really mixed bag for me.
Yeah,
can't put
I
it
would
one side or the other.
say mixed bag as well. There's some things that I really enjoyed, some things that I'm ready to see never appear on TV again, and probably the only one here who's excited about Survivor Series.
Yeah, I can tell you I'm much less excited about Survivor Series than I was heading into this event, which is not how WWE should be trying to play things. Obviously, I'm not the only opinion out there. Plenty of people, of course, are more excited and everything, and it's not like if it doesn't appeal to me that it's wrong or something. But the ideal scenario is like everybody's like, oh man, I can't wait until Monday Night Raw, and I can't wait until Survivor Series, and I'm like, I think you kind of fucked up in some ways. But maybe you agree or you disagree. If you do, in either fashion, we want to know what you have to say. Drop your comments below on particularly the YouTube channel. If you want to take part in any other kind of conversations elsewhere, maybe you want to hit us up on Twitter at SmarkOutMoment, or you want to post something on Facebook.com/SmarkOutMoment. Maybe you want to take part of the discussion on the pages on SmarkOutMoment.com or the Facebook group, the Megamaniacs. But the best thing to do is to go over to the YouTube channel, and when you're on the video over here, drop a comment. Tell us your thoughts on this whole thing. You might be surprised about our opinions about some stuff. Maybe you are fully in agreement about it and you want to go on a rant about something, or you want to rave about how great something was. We invite all of that kind of discussion, so keep that in mind. If you're over there, by the way, hit that like button. It'll help out quite a bit. Ring that little notification bell as well. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, of course, hit that button. Hit the applause button if you like that. If maybe by the end of this pay-per-view post show, maybe you're like, oh, I like these guys a lot, I want to toss $2 their way. That's a way to do that. And very quickly, just to get a couple more plugs out of the way, there's also the membership thing on YouTube. If you join that, it is basically the YouTube version of the Patreon. And if you go to patreon.com/SmarkOutMoment, you can check out all the different tiers that we have there. And if you can't get enough of us and you really want more, 2 or 3, 4 podcasts a week are not necessarily enough, check out the Darkcasts that we got there. They are Patreon exclusives. So do that. Do the Pick Your Poison tier. Browse around. Check the catalogs on the TeePublic and Redbubble shops for the merchandise side of things. For Smark Out Moment, A-Mango Tees, and Fanboys Anonymous, go ahead and obviously check out fanboysanonymous.com if you're interested in that stuff. There's my plugs out of the way. I'll talk more about some other stuff a little bit later on, but we're not plugging everything. We need to get on the actual show itself. Let's start off with the kickoff. In typical fashion, not much going on with the kickoff here. We pretty much only had the typical pre-show panel analysis and the vignettes and kind of annoying stuff like that wastes an hour. Couple little notes that I did have, though. I liked how Jeff Jarrett was on it, and when R-Truth came over to say that he was late for the Raw Talk episode, that he was surprised to see Double J there. Road Dogg, Jesse James. That was pretty funny. I liked how Elias was singing a song about how he's like anti-Jeff Hardy, and Jeff Jarrett was kind of rubbing him the wrong way. So he said, while glaring at Jeff Jarrett, that if he didn't know any better, he would think that the name Jeff was Spanish for junkie. I was like, all right, highlights of the kickoff.
Jeff did not like this.
You could tell I was kind of like, ooh. I like that, though. Not a big fan of the R-Truth versus Drew Gulak match. It was just a nothing match. It meant less than nothing. And really, there wasn't anything else to talk about as far as I know. I didn't write anything else out down. You guys have any other things you want to talk about on the kickoff?
Nope. Completely useless.
Yeah, I wasn't even really paying attention. Had it on the background while I was doing the washing up.
They did announce one more match, kind of. I mean, we were talking about this before with the predictions, and then with the hot tags about how we were like, how is there only 4 matches? And then with the hot tags, how is there only 5 matches? And I had the bump one earlier, and I'm like, how is there still only 5 matches? Like, what the hell is going on here? And then we end the kickoff with Mustafa Ali saying, hey, how about we do a Retribution versus Hurt Business match, 1-on-1? I'm like, really? That's the best that you got? All right, fine, whatever. So later on, we'll talk about what happened with that. Spoiler alert, wasn't really worth watching. So, Callum, I know that you're annoyed about this. We have all our vignettes and all our video packages and our recap stuff, which is like, if you haven't seen every episode of everything and all the recaps that you see every single week, watch these again and again and again. If you just watched the end of the kickoff and you saw the recap for the Roman Reigns and Jey Uso thing, well, set your clocks to about 3 minutes later because they're going to run it again.
Yeah, that was... I don't get annoyed about that type of thing the same level that you do, because I really enjoy WWE's video packages, and I think that the way that their video editing team is able to make really nonsensical storylines seem very important and very well put together in those video packages is excellent. But just the idea of like they decided to end the kickoff show talking about the Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso match, so you see the video package, and then the first match you have on the show is Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso, so you have to repeat the video package all over again, was just really overkill for anyone that did watch the kickoff show. But then again, we probably know that most people don't watch the kickoff show, so they wouldn't get annoyed about it at the same level that we would.
Just goes to show you, though, like, you can't have somebody watch all of the WWE programming and not make them get annoyed at you. And if I were in WWE shoes, I would be like, all right, well, then maybe we just don't do all of this nonsense. And maybe we save a little bit of money and some production time and some headaches. And
it was just bad timing. It's the idea that they should have just, if they're going to do both of these things and you knew that Reigns versus Jey Uso is going first, then you have that talked about first on the kickoff show. Yeah. You get that video package out of the way, and then you separate it so there's like an hour gap in between it, rather than having it with 5 minutes in between. Then you've just spent the last 10 minutes of the 15 you've just seen watching the same Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso video package.
Yeah, it's just one of those annoying things that's out there.
I feel like,
go ahead.
You know, the main roster just works differently, and I think there's this mindset of, hey, our audience is stupid, we really have to beat them over the head. And that's what they do.
Well, the first match of the night was that Roman Reigns match. It was the I Quit match inside the Hell in a Cell for the Universal Championship. Roman Reigns defending against Jey Uso in a follow-up of their Clash of Champions match. And we're on different spectrums here. I loved this segment. Callum, not so much.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you get your bit out of the way first.
So, tell me if I'm wrong.
You're wrong.
I'm assuming that what your gripe is here is that this felt more like a beatdown segment on a show rather than a match, and you think that it should have had more actual like action and been more like a match, right?
Well, hold on. Let me see if I can hit the nail closer. So I'm guessing that first of all, you didn't like how much offense Jey Uso got in after being creamed last month, and I'm guessing that it was too much of a segment for you. And like, why do you need to see a 30-minute promo when they probably could have tightened this up a little bit?
I mean, that there's elements to it. My big gripes with this is, first of all, it was way too long. If you are going to do this big beatdown segment, it's not even the case that Jey Uso can't get any offense in. I think he was perfectly fine getting more offense in. It just, if you're going to have it go this long, Reigns needs to do more. Because that was probably the biggest issue I have with it, is that I think that their match at Clash of Champions was more brutal than this Hell in a Cell match was. Because what exactly did they do that was brutal? They hit each other with a leather strap a couple of times. They locked each other in a couple of submission holds, one using the strap and one with just the guillotine. And then Roman Reigns kicked the steel steps into the head of Jey Uso, which is probably the most brutal thing out of the entire thing of it, but it was just one spot. And it ended by having another guy in the hold force the guy who didn't tap out to anything that Roman Reigns did to him, that forcing him to give up instead. So I don't think it was booked particularly well in that regard. I mean, to an extent, you kind of have to do that if you want Uso to stay strong and force him to say, "I quit" because of someone else's issue, not his one. Doesn't make Jimmy look great. In the fact that he wasn't even involved in the match, and Roman Reigns meant to kick his ass quite quickly. But yeah, the main issues is the fact that that I don't think the beatdown was as vicious as it should have been, and the match overall was boring because it was essentially 5 minutes of action and 20 minutes of Roman Reigns crying, or Roman Reigns talking to the referee, or the referee saying, "Do you quit, Jay, or do you quit, Roman?" constantly over and over again. There's going to be an I Quit match at Full Gear between Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston, and I will guarantee you it is a million times better than this match was, because this was not a match.
I will grant you a lot of what you said. I think not just in this match, the referees really annoyed me tonight. They were almost overbearing in a lot of the matches.
Yeah, I'm getting pissed about how much. Obviously, I know about the fact that you've got the coronavirus and you can't have a crowd and that sort of thing. I am getting so pissed at how they're turning up the mics in the ring, and this whole match is just a load of talking. You know what good wrestlers can do? They can convey matches by not having to talk about what they're doing all the way through it. They can kind of do it with their actions and their body movements and their body language. They don't have to say exactly what they're doing and what they're thinking and what they're feeling in every single second.
Now, I think it works. Like, it worked better in a story like this than it does in some of the other things. Like, I know that on SmackDown, when you have Ziggler screaming, "Do something!" Like, you don't need that. And I agree. I think this, the Thunderdome and the COVID era is kind of making them go, "Oh, this is great. We should just turn the mics up all the way and, let them tell stories in the ring by basically cutting promos to each other in the ring." I thought it worked here because of the attitude of the guys in the match. However, it's not something I want to see heavily relied on going forward. I'm actually going to agree with Callum on one thing here. Roman Reigns did not do enough. He should have beat the fuck out of Jey Uso. He should have tied him to the cage, whipped him. He should have, really made the people who came in to stop the match give them a reason to do so. Outside of that, I enjoyed all of the melodrama that we got here because it just worked for me.
So here's where I'm going to be the most optimistic that I'm going to be the entire night.
Well, that's not like you.
You start off with something that I like, which is the cage is getting lowered and you got that dum 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 dum, and I'm like, I like that. I always love that. It always helps the mood. Starting off with a thumbs up outside of the kickoff. So I hate this whole era of not having the crowd reaction. I hate that, for instance, in the main event, they just piped in, "This is awesome." And I'm like, come on, stop it. So it took me a little bit to get into the idea that we're watching a Hell in a Cell match that has no crowd, and that threw me off a little bit. I liked the action of what we saw, but Marquise, in the Mega Maniacs chat, he brought up the idea about like that it was underwhelming in some ways, and I responded to it in a way that I'm going to echo again here for anybody who's not in our Mega Maniacs Facebook group. I have so little faith in WWE Hell in a Cell matches these days that I go into them with no expectations, where I assume that they're going to suck. There are literally matches that happen to have an obscured viewpoint, and that's it. I don't consider any of the cage elements to be a thing. It tends to be more so, let me throw you face first into the side, and then let's try to book something where we hang off the side and we do whatever. So I didn't go into this expecting the Hell in a Cell element to this to be literally anything at all, other than if they would have decided to raise the cage and for it to not be there, it wouldn't have changed a single thing. So I'm not disappointed in that. That's not excusing WWE. Like, theoretically, if you advertise something, you should follow through with it. If something is the best ever, it should be at least good. And if you are advertising a Hell in a Cell match as super brutal, it should be super brutal. It shouldn't just be, well, we got you to tune in and haha. But in the benefit of the doubt of like, well, they don't do any of this shit anymore. And they had, by the end of the night, we've had now 45 Hell in a Cell matches. 45 of these. Can you tell me any of them other than maybe like 5 that have really had any kind of a spot that's worthwhile of remembering? Not really, right? Only a couple.
I mean, I can remember a lot of them, but that's just because you kind of imprint them in your mind at some point, especially the ones that I was watching when I was younger. So obviously the ones that stand out are the Foley Undertaker match, the first one, Michaels Undertaker, say probably Triple H Foley. But like the original ones, it's too. But especially since 2010, when the pay-per-view was introduced, they've become like a miasma of just not so much nothingness, but it's just they're very typecast now.
Like, can you tell me anything that happens in Randy Orton versus Sheamus from 2010?
And RKO was hit.
Well, that's a cop-out answer. I'm sure he went for the bro kick too at some point. Like,
well, okay, look. Hell in a Cell had a great decade of fantastic, brutal matches, and then this past decade has just been shit.
Yeah, so
I think we can all agree on that.
I can't tell you anything that happened in Roman Reigns versus Rusev, or Kevin Owens versus Seth Rollins, or the Usos against the New Day, which I'm sure at the time I
can recall.
I probably liked that at the time, but I can't tell you anything that happened in it. It's not memorable. I can tell you Kevin Owens versus Shane McMahon happened. And that wasn't anything that I really cared about, like.
Well, Shane McMahon fell off the couch.
That was the turning point. Sami Zayn turned heel. You're naming ones that are actually easier to remember.
That goes to show you that I don't even remember that they're apparently the easier ones to remember. I'm not even remembering the ones that are not as memorable. But so that doesn't affect me as far as my opinion about this. And I didn't expect, of course, Jey Uso to get a whole lot of shots in. I think that he got enough in for it to be worthwhile. It's enough for him to have put up a fight, but not enough to make Roman look weak or anyway. But I really loved a lot of the things that they were saying. And that's where my positive came in here. Like, I liked Roman not quitting and saying, mumbling to himself, the head of the table never quits. I'm like, that's almost a babyface pop at that point, because I'm just like, fuck yeah, tribal chief. Like, head of the table never quits, god damn it, you're right, like that kind of thing. I thought it was funny that they had to bleep out Jey Uso saying that he was going to whip the dog shit out of the big dog.
They bleeped it too late.
And they bleeped it too late. It was like, I'm going to whip the dog shit out. Like, it's always funny when that happens. It's kind of like, hey, asshole. Like, I liked when he put Jay in the guillotine, that he said, I swear to God, I'll take your last breath. Don't make me. Like, cool. I liked when the referee was all the referees and the officials came in, and Roman was like, all right, I'm going to lock the door. Now nobody's going to leave. Fuck this. And it's funny that he tried to throw the steps and it didn't get it in the first time. It kind of a little ruined a moment a tiny bit, but I like the whole thing about, it makes sense that you were testing me when we were kids, but now you're 35 and you still haven't learned this freaking lesson that I'm better than you. Like, and I actually liked the idea that he suckered Jimmy in for the guillotine and that was why he quit. It could have worked in a lot of other ways too, and I would have been cool with it. So it wasn't like this was the only way that they could have done it. But I thought that was a means to get Jimmy involved and some kind of action and makes him look like a jerk because he did that to the injured dude. Like, I thought that the melodrama on most of these things in WWE is usually atrocious, and I liked it on this one a lot.
Well,
I think,
go ahead, Cal.
I was going to say, I think the storytelling aspect of the match is great, and I'm not going to take that away from it. In terms of an actual story and what they're trying to achieve, it accomplished that phenomenally. I just don't think it could have been accomplished in half the time. It could have been done with a lot less like talking and stalling and just laying around in the ring for ages and ages on end. And it's also just a case of this is more of a match than the Firefly Funhouse match at WrestleMania, but not by much. Yeah, so those are the kind of aspects of it. I think that those elements made it drag too much for me.
Yeah.
Which meant that I couldn't get as into it as other people seem to do. But in terms of storyline aspect, this is the thing that has the most potential going forward out of anything. And the storytelling was great. And I'm looking forward to Reigns with the subservient Usos behind him going forward.
So,
okay.
Oh, good.
So, I enjoyed so much of what Roman did here verbally. Like, he just told Paul Heyman, which is something I'm actually a little worried about. He told Paul Heyman, "Shut up. He's got to learn." He was very he's very just like fuck you to Paul Heyman, which is almost making me think, oh God, is the backup plan Heyman brings in Lesnar to fucking kill Roman? Like, because by the end of it, which we'll talk about in a minute, with the awesome use of Hall of Famers, that you know why this worked? Because they didn't overhype this. I didn't even know they were there. Did you know they were there?
Not until they came out.
Yeah, like I thought that was such a nice surprise. But here's the cool thing about the, this is Josh, man. What are you doing? There's Josh laying here. Whatever's happening with you right now, we can help you. And he cries, sits in the ring. I don't know who I am. It's okay. And he suckers him in with the fucking guillotine and putting the Usos on an even playing field. Last month, Jimmy threw in the towel for Jay. This month, Jay quits to save Jimmy. And I'm like, all right, you have leveled it out. They're even. They are subservient to the tribal chief. Roman is the tribal chief because
he was anointed.
They completely crowned him. The heads of the table, the original Wild Samoans, I loved it. This is the kind of stuff, if you're gonna constantly shove old school in our face and, well, isn't this great? Isn't this heritage? This is how you use it properly. This seemed like a legitimate, generational passing of the torch. This was rad.
And to be perfectly honest, even though there wasn't a whole lot of action going on here, I had more fun with this match itself than most of the other matches in the night. Because I can't talk about the action.
Much for some of the matches.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's where we're leading into when it comes to this one, because following that up, if you are of the opinion that, like, there wasn't a whole lot of a match there, let's go and give the fans, like, a wrestling match afterward, they never should have followed it up with Elias versus Jeff Hardy. Now, Elias has never been known for his in-ring skills. He's not, like, the worst person in the world or anything like that by any means, but he's just not playing to his strengths when it comes to in-ring matches. Like, his character works better before the bell rings. And then it becomes like, all right, when's he going to sing another song? For the most part, if he wasn't jacked, he would be a manager. And this Elias and Jeff Hardy feud is not doing much for me, especially when you get a match that is essentially what you would see on Monday Night Raw, and it ends in a DQ. And all it is a means to go, hey, if you didn't watch Raw, then here's your other reminder that that album is dropping. And they're going to beat that into our heads on Monday anyway. So
which is
why bother?
exactly what we called on the kickoff. I think they did us a wonderful favor. This is over immediately, and I'm okay with that because I had no interest in watching them have a long wrestling match with a finish. They did their key spots. Jeff Hardy used the guitar. It was over.
Oh, if it would have gone longer, it would have been worse by far. Yeah.
Yeah, just a match that happened. It's kind of just there in the ether of like, it'd be one of those things where if we ever did like play the game and we brought up this match, this would be the first one you can't be like, I don't know where the fuck that happened. Like, like they had a match on a pay-per-view. God, that's amazing. It's just I picked up a few things in this match though. First of all, Jeff is slowing down, and he's slowing down in a bad way now. This was at the point where I watched him, especially at the moment where he delivers the Whisper in the Wind.
Oh, yep.
Just watching how long it takes him to climb up to deliver that, and how long Elias has to stand there waiting for him to do it. I got really big Rob Van Dam in Impact Wrestling vibes from that.
Oh, come on.
Like Jeff is not. I mean, Jeff can still hit all his spots. It just takes him about 3 seconds longer than it used to, and it's visible. And that's like, yeah, eventually all this stuff is going to take a toll on him. And it also doesn't help when Elias delivers a sit-out powerbomb where he essentially drops Jeff Hardy in midair at the same time. Stuff like that is not going to help Jeff get moving quicker again. So, yeah, so this match wasn't anything special, and the elements that I did take away from it made it worse than it should have otherwise been. So, not great.
Let's take a little side detour here. You brought up Impact. Now, I did not watch Bound for Glory last night. Did either of you?
I had to, yeah.
Did you watch it, Callum?
I didn't watch it. I have seen some of the production issues and stuff like that.
Since we're not going to talk about it in another fashion, let's talk about it for a minute. What I've seen of this, I'm like, so why the fuck is Impact still a thing if they're still TNA?
Like, how many years are we gonna say why are they still a thing?
Forever until they're done.
This wasn't a solid show, but there was some production issues which you would think they really should have fixed. You know, you hear Josh Matthews audibly saying, "God, we didn't test this stuff out." Like,
yeah, it's not just the production and the audio issues. It was just the fact that the show didn't deliver as advertised. I mean, I'm sure that some of the matches were good. I haven't gone back and watched a lot of them, but you don't have Kylie Ray appear, and they don't tell you that before the show happens anyway. You have Su Yung come in out of nowhere, and she wins the championship, which I thought was bizarre, considering the fact that they just signed Deonna Purrazzo onto a new contract, so she's tied up. So why wouldn't you just keep her with the championship? And then the other thing is that Heath Slater gets injured during his match, which supposedly he's meant to win that match. But then they have to do a swerve, and in order for Heath Slater to be hired in Impact Wrestling, they have to have Rhino win the match instead. So now Rhino gets some sort of championship match.
Well, I think either way it was going to be Rhino and Heath go for the tag titles, so it doesn't matter.
I guess, but that alone, like, why are the North the tag team champions again? Why did you break up
Alex
that
Shelley
massive?
Got hurt.
Well, yeah, but why the North? Why not give it to Gallows and Anderson, or even one of the other ones? Like they're one of the longest reigning Impact tag team champions of all time, maybe the longest. I think was the stat going around. But it's just the fact of like, why break that up to give it to them and then give it straight back to them? Like you had two other teams in the match you could give the titles to.
Well, so, also the idea that Heath Slater goes over to Impact and it's like, dude, it's so much better over here, guys. And it's like, what are you doing? You're in a tag team with Rhino and you're injured.
He's fucked. Like I like Heath Slater, but the fact that he jumps to Impact and is immediately the comedy guy again, it's like, all right, bro, that's your role. Like, yeah, well, you're not gonna gender it, you're not gonna drew it, you're just the comedy guy.
I mean, I don't hate Impact. Like, I do occasionally watch the shows and stuff like that, and I do like some of the stuff they're doing with like Knockouts division. I do like what they were doing with the tag team division and elements like that. But it does say a lot about your company when Rich Swann is your world champion.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll try to wrap up these thoughts in very brief things. So as far as the North, I do agree that they're not the people I would have given it to. I would have given it to Gallows and Anderson, quite frankly, because they were the fucking money. they had people talking about your show in June, decided giving it to them, but maybe there's a clear reason why they did not. Maybe they went with the North because, hey, they know they can rely on Ethan Page and Josh Alexander to be there and to stay. Kylie Ray is a very unfortunate situation, which everything we know, as reported by Fightful Select, just appears that she did not appear on the event. There was no like heads out there or anything, so that's unfortunate.
At that
I
point,
think-
after doing this with two
Well-
different companies, it's got to make you think, like, if you're, MLW or you're somebody else, you'd be like, well, I don't know if I could trust hiring her for something,
Well, let's see what happens with her. I don't want to speak too much on that. Su Yung winning has to be because, hey, look, it's a surprise and it's Su Yung and she's not Susie anymore. She's Su Yung. Fine. Deonna Purrazzo signed with Impact because they have a great women's division. I don't blame her for that. I just wish that AEW laid down a more enticing offer. Callum said it perfectly. It says a lot when Rich Swann is your world champion. I think they should have kept it on Eric Young. And
It says a lot to say they should have kept it on Eric Young.
Well, okay, you guys keep knocking Eric Young, but you have to understand, in that promotion, he's a top guy. Like,
yeah, in a local indie promotion, you take Joe Smith, and he's been the world champion of
It's slightly different with Eric Young. I can understand Eric Young just because of the legacy that he has with that company, so it makes sense. But they're playing hot potato with that title quite a bit now as well, because it was on Eddie Edwards. They gave it over to Eric Young just so they can give it over to Rich Swann as well. And you have to imagine that Rich Swann won't hold it for a considerable length of time. So I think they need to actually settle on who they want as their top guy moving forward.
Well, they've got to have a reliable guy moving forward. But you know what? We can argue about this and the head of the table, but The Rock wasn't on Hell in a Cell, okay? The Rock was on Glory.
Yeah, be like, oh, who's got the biggest star on here? It's technically The Rock. They got Ken Shamrock, they got Bret Hart, they got The Rock. Look at this.
They had Mick Foley. Come on. Dead for Glory.
So that's their WrestleMania, and it's instead of dedicating an entire episode to talking about it, it's hey, let's really quickly talk about that because we have nothing else to say about Hardy and Elias. But let's move on to the next match that happened here. It was Otis defending the Money in the Bank briefcase against The Miz. And the first note that I've got is Otis has a new theme song, and unlike the string of themes that we've been getting lately, this feels like an actual theme that was made for Otis. It's got the same trend that's happening now, which now I'm 100% conspiracy mode. WWE Music Group has the directive of start everything with some kind of a flat out identification of the person. It has to be.
That's bad, though. That's like TNA early days in their music where it's like, well, they have to have like a quote or something in the beginning because how will you know who's coming out?
Now, there's been instances over the years where we've had that. It's not like this is brand new. Like, there's been recent ones, like the Mandy Rose one starts off with a Mandy kind of thing. And we've gotten, Super Fly for Snuka.
That's great. Back
in the day, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, a year ago, 20 years ago, it's always been a thing to some people, but we've had the variations where some people don't need that. We didn't have to have, my name is Stone Cold Steve Austin, kind of thing. It would have been awful. You had the glass shatter, and that was enough that made people go, wow, it's Austin, because we know what that means. You had like the opening notes of Bret Hart's theme, that guitar riff that was
amazing,
one of my favorite of all time. The Undertaker's got the gong going off. It doesn't need to say rest in peace and then go into the theme or something, but we have had many songs recently. They're one of two things. Either it seems like they've dedicated it to that person, like Billy Kay, where it just says Billy Kay and it goes into a song that's pretty catchy, or it's something like Keith Lee's, where they took the beginning of his old theme and then just said, here's a generic rock thing in the meantime. This one, it's got it says what, blue collar solid at the beginning of it? Is that what it was? Or a blue collar working man or something? I forget exactly what it is because I didn't go back and re-listen to it a second time. But it's something indicating Otis, and then it goes to something that has some lyrics and it feels like a song.
I got strong American Dream vibes off of it.
You know what? Yeah, it's a good comparison. I didn't think about that. I actually thought,
yeah.
I thought more so if we paired Heavy Machinery up with the Godwins at some point, that would be an interesting pairing. But Dusty Rhodes, yeah, it's a better. I mean, obviously they're not
much better than the Godwins.
They're not Hog and Pig, but you know.
I enjoyed it actually. It's like you said, it's a good theme for him. It fits his character, and he is blue collar solid, and he's on his own now. So
I mean, like when that happened, I was like, oh, cool, he's got his own theme. Didn't think that there would be a reason for that by the end of this match, but it ended up being the case because Tucker turns on him, smacks him with the briefcase, and The Miz is now holding the Money in the Bank contract.
I love this. I immediately messaged Tony like this overreacting excitement because I think The Miz has been out of the championship picture for far too long. If Dolph Ziggler can get a yearly shot at a world title, they could at least have given The Miz one over the last 5 years.
He fought Braun Strowman for the Universal Championship a couple
No.
of years ago.
Yeah,
he did. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he
did.
He did. Yeah.
That doesn't count. That doesn't count. It was a handicap match.
No, it doesn't count. You don't want it to count. That's the kind of thing you're talking about now.
When's the last time you got a one-on-one match for the world title?
Probably a couple months before that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, they kind of cycle in and out. You know, it's like
he hasn't had a one-on-one match for the world title since John Cena at Over the Limit.
What about AJ Styles? Didn't he fight him for the title? When Styles was champion?
He never fought AJ. He never fought AJ Styles. They were on different brands at the time.
Huh.
No, they just had to settle for the fact that they gave him like $1 million in a Continental title reign.
Apparently
it doesn't mean anything. If you're not fighting for the world title, then you're not anybody and you're not getting anywhere. So
even when he fought the Fiend, that was a non-title match.
Yeah, that's
so
always
it's
weird.
been a long time. So for him to get this opportunity, I'm very excited for it. Tucker splitting with Otis, I saw a lot of people bitching. They broke up another tag team. They were already broken out by the draft. It doesn't matter.
But I will say this. Why did you bother breaking up the tag team and splitting them and have them turn on each other if they're on separate brands and they can't feud now?
To give Tucker a reason to be angry. Remember when Shorty G was just angry for a while?
That really worked out for him.
To be angry.
Yeah, now he's angry about the fact that he was angry.
No.
Yeah, well,
no, I would have cut through all this. This is fucking bullshit. This entire thing was just terrible because the match itself wasn't particularly good. The Miz is now holding. Like, I understand, and I completely agree with a lot of people saying that you had to get the briefcase off Otis because Otis is not serious enough to be the world champion. And he wasn't serious enough to even challenge for it as a Money in the Bank briefcase holder. But really, the Miz is your best option above that. Like, it's either Otis or the Miz. Like, can't you actually find someone credible to do it instead?
You put it on?
I don't know. I'm trying to draw up the list of things. I mean, okay, I need to check through the roster really.
Well, I'm going to spoil something that's like obviously if you did not watch this pay-per-view and you don't know what happened ahead of time, I'm going to spoil the ending of this. Drew McIntyre dropped the WWE Championship tonight. And that completely retroactively changed my opinion about what happened with The Miz here. Because at first, when they did this, I thought, okay, Otis retains. They're not going to put it on The Miz because what's the point of putting it on The Miz? Now, I'm a big fan of The Miz. Now, if you're talking positives and negatives, to me, one of the positives is if The Miz gets a world title reign out of this, I'm a fan of that because I'm a fan of The Miz. The downside to it, in one way, as much as there's a positive, there is also a negative. If you get it off of Otis, good. Otis wasn't a serious person to begin with. But Otis without it, what is he going to do now other than fight for the Intercontinental title? Positive of that, Otis can win the Intercontinental Championship, and that seems like it's a relatively normal thing. Whereas I never would have bought him, even with a surprise cash-in, beating Roman Reigns. So you pivot out of that in a positive. Another negative that goes along with it is, well, why did you bother giving it to the briefcase to Otis to begin with? And then you make the argument, well, WWE thought that they could do something with them. Yeah, well, they also should be smart enough that they've been doing this for decades, and they should have realized that they don't have that type of habit in them. And somebody like a Bruce Pritchard or McMahon himself or any of the other people on the writing team that haven't been there for just like a month should know that they have their own habits. I have my own habits. I know, for instance, that when we're going to do a pay-per-view post show, that we're going to go to a certain time length because I know that certain topics are going to go a little bit longer. I know that I'm going to rant about certain things, and I know that when I'm writing up an article, if I'm going to write up a top 10 list, I can usually think of more examples than a top 10, so on and so forth. As a writer, you know some of your tendencies, and some of them you don't know, but they should know. And they should be paying attention to what other people talk about where they point out stuff. Not saying they should be following me exactly, but it's like if I point out all the things that they do, they should read a forum every once in a while and go, oh, fuck, we do that. Yeah, that's right. So they should have known going into this whole thing with Otis that it never was going to turn out to be anything other than a joke. And it ended up being a joke, which ended up wasting months of the Money in the Bank briefcase thing, because ultimately, what did we get out of it? He viewed it with The Miz a little bit. He still had a lackluster thing going on with Mandy Rose because that got dropped pretty much at that point. A couple jokes about a lunchbox. It wasn't worth it. So, Miz winning it now, there are better options, I think, than The Miz, despite the fact that I like The Miz. AJ Styles is one. I think that he would have been a really good Money in the Bank winner. I think that you could get something decent out of a couple different people. If you would have gone with Mustafa Ali in some way before this whole Retribution thing, it might have been kind of interesting to see him be like, good guy turns into a bad guy situation or whatever. I could see benefits to giving it to somebody like, maybe not now, but maybe back then, maybe like an Aleister Black could have been kind of fun. Now, not so much. Maybe a Kevin Owens could be a good option for that. I think in previous years, he would have been better off than that. My issue is with Drew McIntyre dropping this championship, now there's even less of a reason to have that happen. And I'll bitch and complain about the McIntyre thing a little bit later on. But now I'm like, okay, The Miz earlier in the night, I'm like, oh, look at that. McIntyre's got another person to feud with. And then by the end of the night, I'm like, all right, now I have no idea what they're doing with The Miz.
Well,
Miz isn't cashing in on Orton.
how do you know?
It can't possibly be their plan.
Did it before. Maybe that's the whole thing. Is like it's
He
10
did it
years
10 years
later,
ago,
and he
yeah.
just decides to cash in on Orton again.
I am thinking their plan here is get the briefcase off of Otis. It's on The Miz. We'll figure it out, which I hate when WWE does that because they never figure it out. And they are looking at this as, well, we've still got practically a year, even though they don't, where they're just going to have The Miz still hold on to this well past WrestleMania.
Is that an issue, though?
It is if they have no game plan, and then once WrestleMania happens, they end up just wasting it.
You can at least formulate a game plan with somebody like The Miz over somebody like Otis. And I think we're overthinking this. Let's throw out a hard truth here. For several years now, the Money in the Bank hasn't meant anything.
No, but just like the Hell in a Cell not meaning much and making it to a point where I don't go into it expecting anything to happen, that's not a good thing. That at this point, if it doesn't mean anything, that you should be like, okay, well, it doesn't mean anything, so it doesn't matter. Because if none of that matters...
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I think we're focusing too heavily on, well, this year, really, you went from Otis to The Miz. They've made a lot of mistakes with Money in the Bank in recent years. So to me, it's almost like King of the Ring in its dying day when they just decided to scrap it because they realized they were just doing it out of tradition instead of actually formulating a plan for King of the Ring, and I think The Miz can actually do something good with this. If Bryan were to be the guy to beat Roman, you can easily have Miz cash in on Bryan. If you want to do something with, somebody like Drew McIntyre on Raw, or even, an Edge on Raw, or something like that, you can do that. There are options when you get to The Miz. It was just the fact that they never had an idea for Otis. They just thought it would be funny because coming out of Money in the Bank, where we were all desperate for entertainment because COVID was still this kind of like this new scary thing, that, oh, it's funny because we put it on Otis and he won the ladder match without actually climbing the ladder. That was the only thing they had in mind for Otis.
Yeah, but Miz has been a joke for the last 6 months. He has been a complete and total joke. He had a handicap match against the Universal Champion and got completely and utterly destroyed in it with his partner. He hasn't done anything serious since they dropped the tag team championships. They are he at the moment is in like just a holding pattern of being, okay, I'm John Morrison's tag team partner. We do this dirt sheet thing, but don't take us seriously because we seemingly don't take ourselves that seriously either. So I don't think giving it to The Miz is going to make me feel any more excited about the potential for Money in the Bank moving forward. Having looked through the roster, it's quite clear that the fact that they just suck at booking everybody, because I can't really see too many other people besides the people that Tony mentioned that can really be ahead of The Miz, but that's because everybody sucks, not because The Miz is great. But then there's the other issue that we kind of glossed over on this side of thing, is the Tucker turn, because Tucker's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
It doesn't
there's
matter.
nothing.
I'm sorry, but it doesn't.
I don't care if it doesn't matter. It's like, that's the issue. That's the issue. The fact that they have this guy who's a perfectly talented guy and was in a perfectly good tag team with Otis that could have won the tag team championship, that could have had decent tag team runs. I know tag team wrestling is something they don't care about, but you have a tag team there that is perfectly working together as a tag team, that have really good chemistry and all this other stuff. And then you decide to split them up in the draft, which makes no sense in the first place, even though Otis does have potential as a singles guy. But then you just have Tucker turn on him, and now Tucker's going to play I was the one who was the real brains behind this team, and I was the real workhorse of the team, blah-de-blah-de-blah. Same old shit they do with every tag team that splits up. They're going to have one match, even though they're on different shows, and then Tucker's going to go fade in obscurity and be a main event for the rest of his time until he gets released next year. And yeah, maybe that doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but it's just another example of just how shit they are with their staff, and why does anyone work for this fucking company?
See, the problem I have with this...
I'm not disagreeing with you. We did a draft episode and talked about this already. That's why I'm kind of glossing over it, because I don't know what else we can say that we haven't already said.
Well, we did talk about the idea that they split them up back then, and it was like, oh, he's going to be doomed to lose on main event. Well, now he's going to be doomed to lose on main event as a heel. That's the only difference.
Exactly.
And the problem is, you do the turn. What do people have that, like, realistically, even if you ignore like us on a personal level and us as people who hyperanalyze things, WWE's mentality has to be, coming out of this match with Otis and The Miz, that the takeaways are, isn't it interesting somebody turned on his partner? People want to see Otis versus Tucker. And wow, Money in the Bank went over to Miz. What's going to happen there? And if your three takeaways are that, then they should realistically have a follow-up answer for it. That I know plans change and people get injured and everything gets like crazy, but they can't blame everything on that, because they've proven well in the past that before there's injuries that happen, before there's COVID, before whatever, that they still make these mistakes. So, like, if you go like, oh, isn't it interesting that The Miz won Money in the Bank? Let's see how they develop that story. And if their answer is, we don't know how we're going to develop it, then you shouldn't do it. You should have a reason to do things. And if you go, oh, isn't it interesting that Tucker and Otis are now split? Then you go, okay, well, what do you get out of that? And you go, oh, you get that you want to see the two fight. And then you go, yeah, but they can't. Then you go, well, then why bother doing it? And then you go, well, because didn't that make you interested for about 10 minutes on a pay-per-view? Well, yeah, but if it's all just to momentarily tease you and then drag that out into nothing, then, here's a weird analogy, but did either of you guys watch the show Heroes?
No.
So Heroes season 1, all the way up until the end, fantastic show. Once it got to where they were actually paying off the things that they were building, it was like, oh, you actually don't know how you're paying this off. Oh, this kind of sucks. And then they set up a whole season 2 where it's like, oh, you're going in that direction. That's kind of neat. And then season 2 was problematic in way more ways than that, because it was like a writing strike and everything. But that show was built on the idea of, you're intrigued, so you're going to keep tuning in. And then literally once that showed its cards as, well, we didn't really have a plan, we were just sort of doing things, viewership dropped off and the show never bounced back. And that's what happens with WWE, is once you fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 1,000 times, I'm not going to get fooled again, pulling a whole variation of George Bush's quote there. I don't have any faith that Tucker versus Otis is going to be a thing, and it should be, logically. And if it is, then it defies the whole point of splitting them up in the draft, and they shouldn't have been split to begin with anyway, and it shows that they didn't plan this out. And then it's like,
I just want to say again, I really do feel like the bulk of this we talked about in the draft episode. I've said for a long time now that they do not have the depth that they think they have when it comes to this roster. And there's no reason for a brand split other than to say, well, we can make more stars. How do you make more stars? Well, look, these guys win championships. Yeah, but you yourselves have defined your own championships and said, like Callum said about The Miz being a 9-time IC champion, unless you're world champion, it doesn't mean anything. So these championships literally become participation trophies between two brands. And that's why, like, if you just merge the brands, you wouldn't have this problem, because at least you could do Otis versus Tucker in an opening match of Survivor Series, or even Team Tucker versus Team Otis. Now, maybe they get away with that anyway if they do the brand versus brand thing at Survivor Series, but that remains to be seen.
who the hell's going to want to be on Team Tucker?
It'll be Team SmackDown, and Tucker will somehow get on it.
But that's again where I lead into my constant argument, which is it doesn't matter if you have a brand split or you don't have a brand split. If the same fuckwit is writing your entire shows this entire time for the years and years on end, then it's never ever going to get any better anyway. And stuff like this is constantly going to happen.
Mhm.
So it doesn't matter.
Do you understand why everything we've just spoken about is why I'm like, was the Roman Reigns Jey Uso thing far too long? Yes. Was it at least an intriguing story?
Right.
So I loved it.
It made sense. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it made far more sense than this stuff did. It was more also just due to the fact that like Tucker just turned on Otis for no reason. Like all these emotions just surfaced in the spur of the moment, seemingly giving no indication prior to that at all. It's like that sort of thing. It's like you can see so many differences in the Roman Reigns. Like when they do care about a story in the Roman Reigns Jey Uso, but they bring up all this history and everything seems to make logical sense, and they do push things forward. Whereas this one, they think, hey, wouldn't it be funny if Tucker just hit a guy with a briefcase and like laid out his old partner? So it's like, yeah,
It's
I guess.
really-
It's just like, yep, let's do it.
It's really indicative of, oh, okay, so there's a different writer on that one because it's Paul Heyman.
Mm.
And then you go, oh, that's why he cares, because he cares. And then they go, well, shit, why doesn't he write the rest of the show? So then you go, well, we gave him the ability to write the shows. We just didn't let him write the scripts because we threw them all out afterward. And then you go, well, shit, okay.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for like Monday's episode where they have just for no reason they have Otis versus Tucker, obviously because Otis is supposed to be on SmackDown. They have that match on Raw, and then have Mandy Rose come out and kick Otis in the dick.
El Gran Gordo just goes over to SmackDown.
No, Otis is still on SmackDown.
Yeah.
Tucker's on Raw.
I'm sorry, El Gran Gordo. So there you go. El Gran Gordo's on Raw.
Yeah.
There you go. It solves itself.
But Tucker never turned on El Gran Gordo.
Yeah, he's
El
still.
Gran Gordo's still his partner.
All
still
right,
cool
guys.
with it.
We're spending far too much time on this shit. What the fuck? Like, let's go.
Well, you know who had spent far too much time on something and ended up being along the side of shit is the SmackDown Women's Championship Hell in a Cell match. Now, I'm not saying that match was shit, but I'm saying that it's going to be way overrated because this match, be perfectly honest, meh, it's all right. So after 3 years, they build up to this whole thing, and it's like, it was all right. Now, lots of people are going to be convincing themselves that this was one of the best things of the year, that this was amazing, and oh my God, this was so worth it. I think that they're lying to themselves. I think that they spent 3 years waiting for this, and they're going to be convincing themselves that it was worth it. The way that I was convinced for a good chunk of time that Terminator 3 was a fun movie, because Terminator 2 is my favorite movie of all time. It took, all that time, and I'm like, oh, this is actually not all that bad. And then I was like, I know deep down I don't feel that way. And, by the second viewing, I'm like, yeah, this is actually really atrocious, and I don't like it a whole lot, and I'm mad.
You were kind of into episode 7, right?
I was into episode 7's potential, but I didn't like a lot of it. And I thought, oh, they'll fix it by episode 8. The things I don't like, they'll turn it around. And then that's why I make fun of The Last Jedi so much, because that was my, oh, you'll prove those fears wrong. And instead they doubled down on the things I hated and removed the things that I liked. And I was like, oh, so Finn's not a Jedi, and Rey doesn't matter, and this is whatever, and screw this. And I'm like, oh, so clearly I was right in my fears of episode 7. And with this, I feel like I've been saying for 3 years, just get it over with. It's not going to be all that great. And it's like, okay, well, what did you get in this? They set up kendo sticks, and they did that. I'm sick of the fucking kendo sticks. You got the highlight of the match, funny enough for me, was Bayley asking the referee if the referee could help her with the duct tape because she couldn't figure it out.
That was funny.
I'm like,
That was
that's
funny.
the highlight of it. I waited 3 years for her to go, I can't figure out this tape. Shit, it's not what I was waiting for. I made fun of her with the spray paint, saying like, why does she think that she's an NWO and whatever. I had more fun making fun of those things, but at no point was I like, oh, she picked up Sasha and tossed her lightly into a ladder. Like, if I can do that and feel like I'm not going to get hurt, I'm not going to go, oh, wow, this is a brutal match. Be like, no, I could do that. And I'm beat to shit as I am. I got a horrible back and everything, you know? So I'm not impressed. It was fine. And this feud literally has been for years now, where the highlight of the feud was the start of the feud at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I have some similar feelings. I think this match was great. I think it did have a lot of personality, and it did have a lot of, I don't want to say callback spots, but there was a lot of passion and innovation in this one. I did really enjoy the spot with Sasha running up the table, delivering the Meteora, but then she delivered like 5 other Meteoras in quick succession. So I kind of feel like she uses that move far too much, but there was too many kendo sticks. They did introduce some other weapons towards the end of it, which was good. There was some brutal looking spots. I thought this match was more brutal than the Reigns beating on Jey Uso anyway. So I think that they maybe relied too much on trying to be innovative, and maybe that took away from them. I kind of felt like, okay, you're doing some really cool spots, but why don't you just work for a bit? Like, actually just like have a match. But no, I thought that overall this was like a really good match. I think it is being over-egged. I think there are a lot of people online ripping their dicks off over this match and saying how great it was. And talk about metaphorically, I should point out. But
I would hope
I do think-
metaphorically. If you're doing that
Yeah.
for real, guys, come on. Even if we talk for an hour about Otis and whatever, it's still not that serious.
Yeah, so I do think that there is like it was a very, very good match. I don't think it holds a candle to their match in Brooklyn still, or the Iron Woman match that followed it. So I think that it's a distant third in that thing. I don't think it cracks the top 25 Hell in a Cell matches of all time. I think the match between Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks from last year's Hell in a Cell was better than this one. So
I honestly can't remember.
So there is a lot of stuff that like I guess that maybe people will take away as negative. But I just wanted to point out, just fundamentally, this match was really good. I really enjoyed it. It was the best thing on the show up until this point. Probably the best match on the show, period, for me in general, even though it's close with that in the main event. But it is not as good as a lot of people were saying it is online. And those people need to get a bit of perspective and stop getting so wound up with the fact this wasn't the main event, because I could see a lot of people like already basically saying, oh, this Randy Orton Drew McIntyre match is pretty slow. Like, you knew that they'd already typed that in as soon as they realized that Sasha Banks and Bayley isn't already going to be the main event, because yeah, you had to have some reason to believe that this was better than that, even if you weren't even watching the Drew McIntyre Randy Orton match. And then people need to get perspective of the fact that this match has flaws. It's not perfect. So that's kind of my overarching review of this one.
I'd be a lot less critical of it if it wasn't something that was built up as long as it was.
I think that in the same way that Callum is talking about people online who just overhyped this match, and of course it was great because it was Sasha and Bayley, I think that's how Tony is on the negative end, where I think you went into this already underwhelmed.
Oh yeah, because they spent 3 years annoying me about it, so I didn't care, instead of being hyped up about it.
So I'll say this. I was not a fan of how quickly they built to this match after, slowly bubbling it for 3 years. And then they was like, oh, we gotta go to Hell in a Cell. We gotta do it now. I was afraid that it would be a bit of a letdown. I thought that this match was the best thing they could deliver in these circumstances with COVID, with the weird Hell in a Cell structure, which immediately makes it like, all right, we have to get kooky and creative instead of just, letting them have like a match at SummerSlam first or something. I thought this was the second best women's Hell in a Cell match, because Callum's absolutely right. Becky Lynch and Sasha definitely have the best women's Hell in a Cell. I thought the right person won.
Mhm.
You know, I didn't drop Bayley for my fantasy team because I thought, oh, they're gonna keep it on Bayley somehow and drag it out. Nope, the right person won. I think Sasha did some awesome stuff here spot wise. I watched Bayley's Chronicle, and that got me more into this match than anything else, because actually hearing Bayley talk about wanting to separate from Sasha legit, like, I love you, but I'm worried that my career is too tied to you, got me into this match, because hey, maybe they don't do it for a while, and I'm okay with that, and they shouldn't. But it was good. It wasn't like great, and you know, I'm a huge fan of Sasha and Bayley. It wasn't a great match. It was a good Hell in a Cell match. One of the better ones of the modern cells, but definitely not, as Callum said, top 25 material. The right person won. Hey, don't forget The Mandalorian comes out next week.
Might be one of the reasons why. And I'm not going to pull a Ben here and be like, oh my God, Sasha won, so I'm super excited about it. Because to be perfectly honest, like
But like, you're not that kind of a person. Nobody expects that from you.
yeah, I mean, Sasha winning here, I think is the right call. Sasha winning here is something that I'm happy about. But to be perfectly honest, I'd be fine with they just put the belt on Bianca Belair right afterward too. Like, to me, Sasha winning this right now, I'm not looking forward to anything else that Sasha's doing other than the fact that I'm glad that they got it out of the way and they did it. It didn't work out anywhere near as much as it should. It should have happened a year ago. It should have happened potentially 2 years ago. And I think it would have been better. I think it would have made more sense. I think if Sasha would have turned heel on Bayley 2 years ago when Bayley was still a top babyface, that they would have gotten a lot more out of this than a heel Sasha Banks turning on a heel Bayley during an environment where there's no fans and dragging it out an extra year or two. And I'm curious when Sasha drops the belt, because Sasha has a tendency and a history of dropping it almost immediately. So what's the over-under here?
And I don't know when. I'll just say the minute she steps into a ring with Bianca Belair.
Does she drop it before, on, or after TLC?
I think
Before
after.
TLC, after Survivor Series.
I'd say Royal Rumble.
I'm leaning towards, I guess, actually, I'll put it this way. I'm leaning towards two things. If their game plan is what I think that it is, which is Sasha's not a babyface, that she's only a babyface in this feud with Bayley, because they're very heel heavy right now. It's an exorbitantly more heel company right now than it is a babyface company, which is one of the problems I'm going to have with the Orton situation. They're doing a lot of that lately, where it's like, oh, their heels here and their faces here and that kind of thing. Like Gulak and Akira Tozawa, they're heels against R-Truth. Against anybody else, they're baby faces. But that's just how they're booking them. They get very heel heavy when they don't know what to do, because heels kind of drive the plot. And Hurt Business is feuding with Retribution. We'll talk about them in a minute for something that sucked. But that was very salty. They're two heel groups feuding against each other. I feel like their game plan is Sasha's still a heel, and once they get this out of the way, that they're going to have Bianca be the one that beats her at WrestleMania. But they could instead have this weird thing in their mind where they plan on switching the title before Mania to set up a completely different match for Bianca. I don't know who necessarily. Could be Charlotte. I think Charlotte's going to beat Asuka instead. I'm kind of thinking our women's title situation for Mania next year is Charlotte wins the title from Asuka, Rhea Ripley wins the Royal Rumble and faces Charlotte, and Bianca is set up to beat Sasha for that.
You really think they're going to have the belt on Sasha until...
That's hard to believe, isn't it? Because
I think you're overlooking the fact that there's nothing set in stone right now that Bayley and Sasha are done,
Right.
because they could easily run that feud. I think they could easily run that feud if they wanted to until WrestleMania.
The first ever women's one-on-one TLC match.
Oh, they
For
said
the
first ever.
time ever.
They said first time ever for something tonight. What was it?
I think
It was the Elias versus Jeff Hardy. They said for the first time ever, and I'm like,
Oh,
does
for fuck's
anybody
sake.
care? Is there a single person out there in this WWE universe that you call it that is ever going, oh wow, we haven't seen that before. This is a first time ever match. That makes it that much more interesting. No, it doesn't. Come on.
Well, here's the problem. For a while now, they have gotten used to, well, we don't need to try to build stories. The story is, hey, look at that. They're fighting for the first time. So now they think that Jeff Hardy versus Elias means something because it's a first time.
Someone off there is, to quote Callum, ripping their dick off because of the idea of a first time ever.
I want to get that phrase over more.
It's a good phrase. I like it. But like, for the first time ever is great for a lot of things. Like if you were to say to me for the first time ever, the WWE Championship is defended in the Royal Rumble in 1992. Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's fun. I'm going to want to tune into that because the title's on the line. Where, hey, for the first time ever, we're going to have 40 people at the Royal Rumble. Okay, cool. How are we going to do that? You're going to throw in Alberto Del Rio and everything. That sucks. But, like there's for the first time ever things, Royal Rumble or not related, for the first time ever, WrestleMania is going to be done at on 3 different locations at the same time or whatever. Cool. I'm interested. But if you just say something's for the first time ever and it's AJ Styles in a match against Matt Riddle on Raw instead of on SmackDown, it's like, come on, But they might drag this out for as long as they possibly can. It might be Sasha versus Bayley all the way through until Royal Rumble. And then at that point, they don't need to do anything other than Bianca and Sasha. Because then Bianca wins the Royal Rumble or she wins the Elimination Chamber a couple weeks after that. And there you go. Sasha's feuded with Bayley as a babyface, but she's been actually a heel the whole time, and she drops the belt to Bianca after that or something. Or their game plan is something absolutely ridiculous that none of us could ever plan, because their actual game plan is, well, let's have Carmella win it, and then Carmella can drop it to Liv, and then Liv can give it to Paul Heyman or something. I don't know. But I like that Sasha won. I think the match is going to be overrated. I hope that they're done with this feud, but at the very least, I'm glad that they're done teasing the feud. That makes it takes a lot of that pressure off, and I don't hate it as much.
I thought it was, again, really good match. Not a right home, stop what you're doing and watch this match, but it was a really good match. And although I've said this a lot lately, it doesn't make it okay. But the cynic in me is like, this is what Hell in a Cells are now. Yes, this is a high-end Hell in a Cell for right now. Does that mean that I like it as compared to real Hell in a Cell matches like Triple H and Cactus Jack? No, but it was a pretty good match. They didn't disappoint, which when you have this kind of build, I thought they would. But it was real good. I don't know where they're going, but I don't think they do either. So let's just blind lead the blind. Let's go.
That's a good transition for this next thing, because Mustafa Ali had challenged MVP earlier to pick somebody from the Hurt Business to fight somebody from Retribution. And MVP said, all right, well, Bobby Lashley. Not only is he the biggest and the strongest of us, but, why not? And we're going to pick somebody from that side, and we'll even make it a United States Championship match. And Shelton Benjamin had the idea of, what about the one with the stupid mask? And it's like, well, which one? Slapjack, the one with a stupid name too, and all that. So not only do they not have a match advertised ahead of time, but on the kickoff, they go, well, we'll talk about that later. And then 2 minutes before the bell rings, they go, I don't know, how about this? Also, your faces are stupid and your names are dumb. And then the guy taps out. It's like, well, Retribution sure sucks even more this week than they did last week, and the week before that, and the week before that. Every week they take a downside more so. They had a little up thing with Mustafa Ali being a part of the group, and then it was like, no, we need to remind you that these guys blow. So just
I wasn't like, so there's the slap in the face that Slapjack tapped out, but what killed me, and which made me go, okay, scrap the angle, they're done, is that Ali ran from the Hurt Business like a little bitch. He dived out of the ring like if he hasn't wrestled these guys every week for the last 3 or 4 months. Just cancel the gimmick. It's dead to me.
Oh, I got killed for me earlier than that or at least in this segment, because this segment, like as Tony referenced earlier, totally sucked. But the idea was that Lashley wins, forces him to tap out to the Hurt Lock, and then he's being double teamed by T-Bar and Mace.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then
and
he
he
fights
fucks
off
them up
T-Bar and
too.
Mace on their own, on
Right,
his own.
the
fucks
two
them
big
both up
guys.
before the other Hurt Business turn up, and then Ali slivers out of the ring like a coward as soon as the other guys get involved in it. But then it was, well, to be fair, I lost all faith even before that when Slapjack's first offensive move is he missed a drop kick by about a country mile, because seemingly he's wearing a mask and he can't see out of that mask because he's wearing a stupid mask that shouldn't be on his face. And Bobby Lashley, I think, was maybe playing games with him a little bit because everything he was doing was targeting the mask. So I almost feel like he was trying to do something to make him fuck up by doing that. Like maybe I pushed the mask to the side slightly so his vision's obscured or something like that. But yeah, this gimmick is like it's not even funny to say it's dead anymore. It's like it's rotting in the grave at this point.
It's been dead since night 2. And
it's just festering now.
Yeah, I mean, the very first night it was like, all right, it's kind of cool. They got like these people, they're throwing Molotov cocktails, trying to fuck up everything. Kind of neat. And then it became, wow, look at these dorks.
And then it became people with a chainsaw.
Yeah, then it was like, oh, the dorks are back. Oh, now they're calling themselves Retribution. Oh, okay. What are you getting Retribution for? Oh, we've been ignored and we're annoyed about that. Okay, you were ignored. How many matches have you had lately, Dominik Dijakovic and Mia Yim and now Dio Madden? Yeah, you haven't been doing much. Shane Thorne, you haven't been doing jack shit. Mercedes Martinez, you don't even matter. You're out of
earlier this year.
Yeah, you were a part of the Raw roster earlier this year, and you were in a tag team with MVP that went nowhere for 2 weeks. But like, at least Dominik Dijakovic, like you've been doing some pretty decent stuff, and Mia Yim, like you've been a rock solid member of this women's division, and you guys are all a part of NXT, but you're gonna get signed by WWE. That's stupid. Also, they signed you so you can wreck your own roster. Okay, whatever. And you got your own theme song, so somebody was like, hey, you guys, you bunch of rebels, do you like this song? You want to go to the booth with me and check it out and whatever? You got your own logo and all that. It's just, everything about this has been dumb. The masks are dumb. The name is dumb. The look of them is dumb. They've been losing their matches. They're not even losing by like weird methods. They're flat out tapping out. And one of the ones that tapped out was the biggest, tallest, most imposing guy out of the bunch. Bobby Lashley can beat them up on their own. They lost to Hurt Business twice now. They're running like cowards. Yeah. The Fiend beat the shit out of them on their own. At this point, if Alexa Bliss beat the crap out of Mace, I'd be like, okay, I see it. You know, it's one of the reasons why I dropped him from the fantasy league. I'm like, Mace isn't doing shit now. Like, I thought that he could maybe be somebody who could be something. No, he's not.
Can I say one positive about this before we like just trail away from this horribleness?
That was quick.
Oh, it was quick. That was good. That was beneficial. But I really, really like Lashley's one-arm spinebuster, because he's just this freak of nature, and he got Slapjack up about 80 feet in the air before slamming him down, and that was like, that's cool. That was a cool move.
Lashley's been a big upgrade this year.
That took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, you want to say something good? Lashley, they somehow rehabbed Lashley this year. Lashley looks like the machine he should have always been. And this time last year, he was making out with Lana and in a feud with Rusev, and now he looks like a killing machine. So we can't have too many good things, but at least we have Lashley, and I'm okay with that.
I think a running theme for this year is when somebody says we can't have too many good things, the people that give out the good things say, you already have enough. Let me take more. Yeah, so I'm more nervous the fact that you said that. It's like we don't have many good things going on right now. Like if you talk WWE or outside of WWE with the rest of the world, it's like there's not much that's great in WWE. And if it's
No.
like we got to start like going like, well, Lashley doesn't suck anymore, like that kind of thing. Retribution certainly not one of those good things. The positive is that they're giving these people all these shitty names, so they could even kind of act like they didn't even be a part of this. If like down the line they just go like, "Hey, Mia Yim is now a roster member," and they could just be like, "Nope, nope, she was not reckoning. Nope, I don't know what you're talking
I kind of
about."
see it going that way. You know how like we know that Ziggler was Nikki,
Mhm.
but he's not. I kind of see this becoming, hey, T-Bar, who the hell's T-Bar? And Dominic Dijakovic. That never happened. Never happened.
Right. It's going to have to be because there's no way that this is going to work. They've already shot themselves in the foot with it. And God forbid they do something with Survivor Series about this because it's not going to work. They already had the 4-on-4 match.
Maybe
And they
it'll be Team WWE. No, or it'll be Team Raw versus Team SmackDown versus Team NXT versus Team Retribution.
Hope not.
I
Especially
hate you,
because
Callum.
they're on the...
No. I hate Callum. Like, why'd you even put that out in the universe in this year, this horrible year?
Because I watch WWE to feed my lust for seeing things that are shit.
Masochist.
And that's kind of like it's just like in the same way that people watch like reality TV and Big Brother and stuff like that. I want to watch this to see train wrecks constantly on my screen.
Well, here's what they do. Typically, Survivor Series matches these past bunch of years have been 5-on-5. There's only 4 men in Retribution. So Cain Velasquez is coming.
All right, that's enough.
Well, let's go to the main event here. The Hell in a Cell match for the WWE Championship. Drew McIntyre, as I mentioned earlier, drops the title to Randy Orton. And I didn't like this match as much as I was hoping that I would. I liked it in some ways. I thought McIntyre all the way up until the end looked strong. I think that they made a major mistake in switching the titles. And that's my main takeaway from this is I can't see any positives coming out of this that are going to be worth what they did. Because the only positive I can see coming out of this is if they have Edge beat Randy Orton at WrestleMania. And I don't think that that's the right way that they should be going. I don't think that that needs the title on the line. I think that it's not trustworthy to put the title on Edge to begin with. I think even putting the title on Randy Orton at this point, probably not the most trustworthy thing because Randy Orton gets his fair share of injuries, and that means that he shouldn't.
It's been a long time since Randy Orton's been hurt. You can't just...
Well, he's also been taking time off, and that's one of the reasons why he hasn't been getting hurt. And if they have him on the championship side of things now, he can't be taking time off. So that kills that idea.
They only work once a week.
Even still, I mean...
He's got time off.
I don't think that this is at all the right way to go as far as setting up feuds for the future, because we established this during the draft. There are far more options for Drew McIntyre to feud with people going forward than Randy Orton. Randy Orton's got Jeff Hardy, Matt Riddle,
Keith Lee.
Redoing the Keith Lee thing, which I don't like the idea of them being like, we'll do that again. You know,
they'll turn the thing babyface.
I don't think that that's a good idea either. And I don't think Randy Orton versus Roman Reigns at Survivor Series is a good idea. And I don't think that the alternative of, well, then we just won't do it, we'll just have the titles on the line, is a good idea either, because that's supposed to be the one time a year where Raw and SmackDown go head to head. And if you take out the head to head matches, then what the hell are you serving that up on a platter for if it's got nothing on the plate?
I'm starting to think this is an aside that the Survivor Series thing is that they're not going to do a champion versus champion match, and that is mainly just due to the fact that NXT has a world champion who is unavailable right now, and we don't know if he will be available by the time Survivor Series comes around. So they might do something where it's just, okay, we'll just have the WWE champion and the Universal champion defend against someone else, and we'll do all the other matches be Raw versus SmackDown versus NXT.
That's what they did last year, but outside of the fact that they did have the lower third where it was red, yellow, and blue, I think more of the focus will be on Undertaker than it will be on anything brand related, and they don't necessarily need to do the brand warfare thing.
But that's the gimmick.
Well, yeah, but they can change that. And there was a time where that wasn't the gimmick.
Yeah, what?
But if they've got it as the red, yellow, and the blue, and that's the
They
selling
can change
point,
that as well.
Maybe they
I mean,
didn't
at
get a
one
new
at
lower
one point they
third
were
yet,
advertising
Tony.
it was going to be Jinder Mahal versus Brock Lesnar in Sources. They changed that, so they can do what they want. It's their playground to play in.
I got a feeling that there's a couple ways that they do this, and I don't like any of the ideas. Like, for instance, they could just be like, hey, wouldn't it be interesting if Drew McIntyre won the title back before Survivor Series on Raw, and that'll pop a rating. And I don't want that to be the case, but I do think that Drew McIntyre is a better choice to be champion right now. So,
well, what if they popped a rating by just putting it on Keith Lee? And surprise, Keith Lee's champion now. Keith Lee, Roman Reigns at Survivor Series.
Let's face it, they're not going to pop a rating doing anything unless John Cena comes back and beats Randy Orton, and that's probably not going to happen either.
I'm fine with it. Like,
there is a slight chance. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up because I don't think it's going to happen. But a slight chance that The Undertaker fights Randy Orton at Survivor Series.
I don't think that.
And that this whole thing of setting up this 30-year anniversary with The Undertaker and the Legend Killer, and The Undertaker's a legend, and that's his anniversary, and you did the whole, remember that they feuded with each other, I stepped in the Hell in a Cell with The Undertaker, and I earned his respect and all that. Maybe that's one of their plans. If they do that, then, I mean, as great of an Undertaker fan as I am, my number 2 favorite of all time, I don't think that he should win the championship either, because then what do you do? And
It's been 30 years.
like there's, maybe they do this whole stupid kind of random thing where they end up, maybe they do this, and this is another way that I don't think is the right way to go, but maybe this is their plan. Just to bounce around and do the same old bullshit that they do sometimes, where it's like, well, we hot potatoed it because it's interesting when a title changes hands and whatever. Maybe they have this Raw versus SmackDown thing. Maybe they just say, screw it, we can't get Finn Balor, so we're going to have the 2 titles on the line, and everything else is going to be brand warfare, but other than that. And we get Roman Reigns defending against, I don't even know. They probably wouldn't know either. And
Big E or something.
Maybe Big E, yeah. And we get Randy Orton against The Undertaker in a match, just for the sake of having a match. And we get Drew McIntyre leading the charge of Team Raw. And Drew McIntyre's Team Raw wins. And that earns Drew McIntyre a chance to get the title back at TLC. And he wins the title back then. And then they go, ha, look at that. Randy Orton was the champion again. Drew McIntyre's back. Now we're setting up whatever. Maybe they do it like that. Maybe they do keep it on Orton all the way up until WrestleMania or down the line. But if they do, I don't know who he really fights. It's worthwhile to do that. And then I think that downgrades Drew McIntyre, because I think without the title, McIntyre is not as big of an importance. I think he needed that belt. I don't know where The Miz comes in with this, because I can't see The Miz cashing in on Orton. But I can see The Miz potentially cashing in on Edge. So I'm like, I'd like to say that there's a lot of avenues they could go that I like, but there isn't. I'd like to say that there's a lot of avenues they could go that they planned out, and I don't think that they do. And I don't have a whole lot of faith this is a good call for the immediate future and for the next few months and for all of 2022 or 2021.
Well, first of all, I don't like the fact that you just skipped a year, which
it feels like that's what this year is. This is a year of like the empty void in a lot of ways.
I'll say this. I think that this show wasn't as overall negative or draining as we have perhaps made it sound on this podcast, because there is just the overall black cloud looming over everything that this company doesn't know how to follow up and follow through. As it pertains to Orton, you kind of, listen, if they did the Undertaker thing, I wouldn't hate it. I don't see it happening, but like, they have that option, and I'm not as down on even a guy like Undertaker if he can play the hits, because as we've established, they have nobody that anybody gives a fuck about. And yeah, you can say that putting the Undertaker in the ring isn't going to solve that problem, but neither is anything that they do when guys like The Undertaker or Edge or Randy aren't in the ring. So at this point, just put something in front of me that that I'll at least get a kick out of. You know? That's my personal take, just because I have no interest in seeing Randy Orton versus Matt Riddle, who runs away from Big Jordan. I
Yeah.
have no interest in seeing Randy Orton versus R-Truth because they'll think that's funny. You know, I like Randy Orton a lot. I just don't know who they can put up against him unless it's a guy who is established. Maybe you run Kofi back. Not saying that's a great idea, but it's an idea they can possibly do. They do have Kofi.
I feel like with Orton as champion, they have to start trying to figure out what they can do. Whereas if they would have kept the belt on McIntyre, they had options that they could easily go with. Like, they're giving themselves more work to do, and they've proven that they can't figure things out when it's an easy softball pitch that
You
they
know what's
can't hit
funny
it.
is on WWE Aura today, doing the preview of Hell in a Cell, McIntyre was like, "Yeah, so Randy Orton will be in my rear view, and then I can like defend against Sheamus and fight AJ Styles with his new big bodyguard." And he mentioned another guy. I was like,
Bray
Braun
Wyatt, Braun
Strowman's here and
Strowman.
Keith Lee. Like he did literally do that today in a stream, and now he's not champ. That being said, I waited for this moment since SummerSlam, so like I can't be mad that they finally put the belt on Orton. It just seems like now it's not as strong of an idea as it could have been in August.
Yeah, he lost
And
3 matches before, and it's like he wins on the last one. Come on.
and also as a match, because we haven't really talked about the belts about action, this was good. I enjoyed the fact that all 3 Hell in a Cells had their own flavor, because if you're going to do 3 Hell in a Cells, at least make them different from one another. I hate the spot where they fall off the side of the cage.
Yeah.
I no longer care about that. What's worse is this era is so sanitized, and I don't want to be like, oh, boo, you're taking care of people now. But like this era is so sanitized that they literally had little
Footholds.
platforms.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what the fuck was that?
As soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, so they're hanging off the side and somebody's falling.
Why do you have platforms for people to stand on the side? That's stupid.
Because they don't have that all the way around the whole rest of the thing. It's not like that's
No,
like
just on the one spot right
Yeah.
above the table.
it's we already a couple years ago established this idea that there's just holes there for people to climb, which is like, why would that be there? Okay, maybe you can justify that it's like
For the
that
camera.
people climb in there for the equipment and they're trying to set up the thing. Okay. And then you go, oh, what are the footholds for? Oh, so people can climb it. Okay, but they can only climb it when they're around that side. Only enough for 2 feet and another 2 feet.
It's just a small thing that was just a little frustrating to me. I think it was fine for what it is. I won't remember it next year, and we can move on. But Randy Orton's 14-time champion. I say he's been the most consistent this year. I know that Callum disagrees with me, and probably you do as well, Tony. But
No, Orton's been great this year.
He's had a good year. I think this is a reward for a good year.
In so many ways, I really have been digging Randy Orton. He's one of my top in a lot of things for my awards at the end of the year. I just don't think that he should be holding the championship right now. I think it does the title scene a disservice. I think it downgrades McIntyre to a point where he's not going to be able to be as important. I don't care if they have oh, it's McIntyre versus Bray Wyatt. Isn't it interesting? Well, it would have been a lot more interesting with the belt. And then you go, oh, well, Orton's defending it against, I don't know, Kofi and whatever. Okay, well then who cares? He's not going to lose it. He's going to keep it until Mania. If he doesn't drop it to Drew McIntyre at TLC or before Survivor Series, Orton's holding it until Mania, then I don't care. And then they screwed it, At the very least, they could have gotten some really good feuds out of some of the other things. And I really hope that their game plan isn't, well, we don't know what's going to happen with Edge and whatever, so maybe at Mania, Drew McIntyre can win it back from Orton. Then I'll be like, God damn it, come on,
Well, in terms of the actual match itself, the match was very good. I think that it was at least on par with the women's title match. I feel like when they went up onto the cell, you kind of get that rush of adrenaline when they do that in the first place, because you kind of feel like, what the hell is going to happen? And then when you actually see people fighting on top of the cell, you realize they really shouldn't be up there because they can't get any footing. And so they can only do the most basic shit up there. They were up there for about 2 minutes, and then Orton started climbing down, and then you have the spot going through the table. I think McIntyre sold that very well. The finish was really good with him hitting the clay. I think as soon as he hit the Claymore and Orton rolled out, I kind of felt, okay, Orton's winning this one, because McIntyre's going to miss a Claymore. Orton hasn't hit an RKO yet. He's going to hit the RKO. He's going to win. So that's exactly what happened. So the match itself was good. I'm not exactly happy with Orton winning the title, just because I feel like, I mean, I know necessarily we don't know what the future's going to hold. I feel really terrible for Drew in the sense that even though he got a long run with the title, he never got to perform as champion in front of the crowd. And I don't think he's ever going to win the title again, because he doesn't seem like one of those. I think he had a successful run, but I don't think he seems like one of those people like Kofi, who, okay, we gave the title to, that was experiment, but he's not one of the like favorites, like the ones not the round table that you pull out every now and again for, okay, once we've given this guy a long run, we'll pull out like an AJ Styles or a John Cena or a Randy Orton or a Brock Lesnar, and they're like our mainstay champions. Drew doesn't seem to fit into that mold for me. Maybe I'm wrong. I would like to see him win it again, and I'd like to see him hold the championship in front of a crowd. But right now, I think that he's out. He won't be out of the picture, but he's not going to win the title for a while. My mindset is that I think Orton's, depending on when Edge is available, I think if he's available at Royal Rumble, I think he drops it at Royal Rumble, and then Edge faces somebody else at WrestleMania. If not, then they would do that match at WrestleMania instead. I think the fact that Orton is a 14-time world champion is starting, again, it's just, there's too many people with too many title reigns. But that's just like an overarching issue with the company and the way they book champions in the last 2 decades anyway. So there's so can't really change too much about that. But match was good. Not sure what's going to happen in the future with that side of things. Really not looking forward to Orton versus Reigns if they do decide to do that Survivor Series, because that seems to make absolutely no sense to me.
I'm also just not looking forward to, like, if this is their game plan and it's not having the champion versus champion thing at Survivor Series, and then going into, for instance, turning Bray Wyatt babyface and having him up against Orton, you're not going to have me as a happy camper for the next few months. Just because I'm not into it.
Also, Orton needs to invest in a pair of those Angel Garza rip-off trousers. This is like, you just have to have a moment where he is wrestling in slacks for half the match, and then he just decides, okay, I'm just going to take these off, and I'm wearing my wrestling gear underneath it. So they had to cut the camera away while he's just, I assume, just laying on his back, trying to take his trousers off over his ankles and stuff like that. So you can think of a quicker way of doing it in future.
So I'm worried about what's happening next. I don't feel happy about a lot of these things. I don't like how I'm going to have to write up another couple of articles now that are going to be harder to write up, because now I'm going to be more negative about it than I was hoping that I would after Hell in a Cell. Like, I don't like when a pay-per-view ends and I feel more like, oh, God damn it, rather than like, oh, cool. Like, you know? So we'll see, I guess, how this plays out. But any other thoughts you guys got for wrapping things up here on the recap side of things?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, I don't feel that downtrodden about this, but maybe it's because I have gotten to the point where, like, I don't expect any better. In fact, I expect kind of worse from WWE. So this was far from the worst thing we could have gotten.
I think the show, for the most, well, at least the 3 cell matches delivered in their own separate ways. I think everything else around the show was a damn squib. But yeah, so they had 3 matches that they were kind of pressing, and those ones delivered for the most part. So as an actual show, it wasn't that bad. But then again, it was very 50-50 because it was surrounded by a bunch of matches which nobody even cared about or were really badly booked.
Oh,
kind of right.
That's That's kind of it, I guess. I ran through my plugs in a lot of ways. The only other thing I didn't mention is the fact that the Champs Giving tournament is going on right now. So if you are interested in voting on that and trying to determine who is the best to never have won the world title, go ahead and do that. Because over the course of the next week, up until next Friday, that's going to be happening with the qualifying round, and then we'll kind of carry on that round 1 and so on and so forth all the way through until Thanksgiving. You're gonna be hearing some stuff from us next week, of course, with the AEW roster tier lists, and then of course the hot tags, and then the next episode of the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast, which these guys do every single week. So who wants to take the baton over with the plugs?
Oh, I'll take it. You want it first. You grab
yeah,
it first.
because I have more, and I'll get them out of the way. You can follow me on Twitter @DudeFelice. Check out everything that I've done over on Fightful and WrestleZone. This weekend, I did a really fun breakdown of Bayley's Chronicle that I'm actually really proud of, so you can go check that out over on Fightful. But one of my favorite side projects is the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast. Callum, tell them about it.
Well, I didn't want to start with that actually because I wanted to get some fantasy league out.
Oh, right. Out of the way. Wait a minute. Hold on. I won tonight.
Well, you don't know that.
I do because you told me.
No, I didn't. I said that you got one thing right, which is that, like, you got the Otis winning, you got the Miz winning over Otis, like I did. So essentially, what happened is that for the fantasy league predictions, we did our predictions for Hell in a Cell. We got everybody's to get their final bits together because not everyone was involved for every element of the predictions. So it pretty much followed a similar pattern, is that we all predicted, we only went for the 5 matches because they announced the 24/7 title match very late, and they had the United States title match announced on the show, so we didn't predict those ones. So we only predicted 5 of the 7 matches. 4 of them we all got the same prediction, which is we had Banks winning, we had McIntyre winning, so that one obviously we got incorrect. We had Reigns winning, Elias winning, and the only difference was that Tony and Wago went with Otis to win, and me and Rob went with The Miz to win. And me and Rob won that side of things. So we both got the same in equal number of predictions correct. The only difference now is the time prediction. So there was only a minute in between our times. Rob went with a time of 22 minutes 36, and I went with a time of 21 minutes 39. And the time, at least clocking in on Wikipedia, which is rounded up, but it's obviously shows that Sasha Banks and Bayley went 26 minutes and 35 seconds. So Rob wins in terms of being closest to that time. He had the highest time at the very least. So Rob wins the prediction contest for Hell in a Cell, which means he will have an extra draft pick. He will have an extra draft pick and up until Survivor Series.
Will. That's good. I thought I went way too low for Sasha and Bayley because I thought they would end up.
Well, we all went way too low. Everyone predicted below the time they actually went.
Yeah, well, that's cool. So I told you, comeback of the century, gonna do it. Yeah.
In terms of the actual points out of Hell in a Cell, Tony cleaned up with having Roman Reigns and Sasha Banks both on his team.
I lost points for McIntyre though.
You're a jackass because you should have just allowed me to get Sasha Banks back after realizing that WWE wasn't going to keep her out. You're an asshole.
I might drop her.
Tony's currently sitting for this this week. Obviously, only one showing on 55 points, whereas Rob's got 28. I have 26. And Wago has 3 because he only had Ali appearing on Hell in a Cell. So, and that was a great performance as it was. But yeah, so we'll keep following. You can keep track of all the Fantasy League stuff, both on the Smark website, and I do weekly updates on the Mega Maniacs as well. Other than that, the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast, as both Tony and Rob mentioned earlier, next week's edition is a special Halloween edition of SmackDown, which includes a great match between Brock Lesnar and Rey Mysterio. We have some backstage shenanigans with people in costumes. We have John Cena breaking out his rapping gimmick for the very first time. Have Big Show versus Rikishi and more build up towards his match with Brock Lesnar over the title at Survivor Series. And of course, the most random bullshit, crazy segment maybe in backstage history on SmackDown. takes place on that episode as well.
Yeah.
So I won't spoil it for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about. So hopefully you look forward to that one. You can follow me on Twitter at WeekMotor14. Check out all the great articles on smark.com. And yeah, that's it for my plugs and Fantasy League update.
So
It's your cue, Tony.
we talked about the roster tier list stuff. We talked about the Champs Giving stuff. Trying to remember if there's anything else that I need to plug other than the fact that if you haven't gone to everything else on Smark Moment or Fanboys Anonymous, that you should be doing that. But if that is the case, and you hit up the Patreon and the merch shops and everything else that's happening on there, you check out all the freelance stuff that I'm doing on the other avenues and stuff. I don't think that there's anything else to really mention, but if there is, I'll mention it in some fashion on some other things, because there's too many plates that I'm spinning at this point. I'm losing track of everything. And yeah, if you liked what you heard, hit that like button and keep listening, because we got plenty of stuff coming your way. But that's it for the Hell in a Cell 2020 recap. The post show is wrapped up, and we will see you next time, everybody. For now, this has been another Smark Out moment. We're being counted out.